At my father's golden goodbye gala, he thought it would be a riot to present me as a deadbeat daughter with no prospects. My name is Chloe, and I'm 33. About 4 weeks ago, at my dad's retirement shindig, I hit a point of no return and walked out of my own bloodline for good. Let me paint the scene. Imagine a pristine country club, all crystal chandeliers and stiff white tablecloths. Nearly 200 guests, in their finest formal wear, sipping expensive bubbly as if it were tap water. My father, David, was holding court at the podium, mic in hand, delivering a speech that was equal parts corporate victory lap and family roll call. He went through the list, his trophy wife, his business partners, and then he got to his golden boy, my brother. Finally, his eyes landed on me. He wore that signature smirk, the one he reserves for when he's about to make a joke at someone else's expense. And this, he announced to the crowd, is my daughter, Chloe. No diploma, no direction, just living off daddy's dime. The room erupted in laughter, the kind of cruel, relieved laughter you hear from people who are just glad the target isn't them. I didn't crack. I didn't lower my gaze. Instead, I stood up, raised my glass of champagne, and said with a steady voice, "Cheers to that. This is the last time you'll ever see my face." Then I turned and walked out. The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. What happened after that moment changed everything. But before I get to the fallout, let me rewind about 15 years. Let's go back to the day I was told my future was being canceled. The Harrisons of Greenwich, Connecticut, that was our brand. Upper crust, respectable, the picture of suburban success. My father, David Harrison, was the CEO of a mid-tier shipping and logistics firm. We had a sprawling colonial home with a 3-car garage and a membership to the stuffiest club in town. To the outside world, we were flawless. But inside those pristine walls, things were different. My mom passed when I was 9. Cancer, a quick, brutal illness that stole her from us before I could really remember her scent or the sound of her laugh. I have fragments of memories, mostly her hands, always reaching for mine. 2 years after her death, my dad remarried. Her name was Patricia. She came with a son from a previous marriage, Derek, who was 4 years my senior. Within months of the wedding, they weren't just part of the family, they were the family. I was just the furniture. Not abuse, not cruelty, just a constant, soul-crushing invisibility. Derek got the praise for his football trophies and his grades. My achievements were met with a dismissive nod. Derek got a brand new BMW for his 16th birthday. I got a hand-me-down station wagon with a dent in the side. Derek was being groomed to take over the company. I was just there. My father never yelled at me or hit me. He just looked through me, like I was a ghost haunting his perfect living room. But there was one person who saw me. My grandmother, Eleanor Harrison, my father's mother. She would call me every Sunday without fail. She'd ask about my books, my friends, the little dreams I was too afraid to share with anyone else. She used to say, "You remind me of myself at your age, Chloe. They all underestimate you, but I see the fire in you." She left me a gift when she passed away, something she kept hidden from the rest of the family. A final lifeline. In that household, I honed the art of being invisible. I didn't realize it then, but that cloak of invisibility would eventually become my strongest armor. The defining moment came when I was 20. I was in my sophomore year of college, studying business with a near-perfect GPA. I had a scholarship application on my desk for a summer program in London that I was desperate to win. My father summoned me home for a family meeting on a Wednesday. Those words always felt like a threat. I found him in his study, surrounded by his leather-bound books and corporate awards. Patricia was standing beside him, a pillar of support. "Chloe," he started, without looking up, "we have to make some tough decisions. Derek has been accepted into a top-tier EMBA program. It's a massive opportunity for him. I knew what was coming. I'd felt it in my bones. We can't afford to cover both your tuition and his program," he continued. "So, we've decided you'll take a temporary break from your studies." Patricia nodded, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "A woman doesn't need an EMBA to be happy. Chloe, you'll find a nice man to settle down with eventually. That's what really matters. I sat there, frozen, not because I was surprised, but because a tiny, foolish part of me had held on to hope. You promised, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You promised, Mom, you'd support my education. My father's jaw tightened. Circumstances change, he said curtly. When things stabilize, we can revisit it. He never did. I found out later from a loose-lipped cousin that there was more than enough money. They just chose to invest it in Derek. I didn't argue that day. I just nodded, swallowed my pride, and made a silent vow. This was the last time I'd let anyone else determine my value. I left for Boston with a measly $2,000 and a suitcase of clothes that felt like they belonged to a different life. My first home was a 400-square-foot studio above a 24-hour laundromat. The pipes clanked all night, and I lived on instant noodles and day-old pastries from the cafe where I worked the early shift. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. There's nowhere to go but up. I found a job as an admin assistant at a small logistics startup. It was a minimum wage gig, but the owner, a gruff old-timer named Frank, saw a spark in me. "You've got a sharp mind, Chloe," he told me. "Don't let it go to waste." I took his advice to heart. I stayed late, learned every software system, and took free online courses in supply chain management and business analytics. The internet became my Ivy League classroom. I never called home. I never asked for $1. When my father's secretary sent me a birthday check for $50, I tore it up and threw it in the trash. 4 years after I left Connecticut, I had saved enough to launch my own consulting firm, Pinnacle Strategies. Just me, a laptop, and a desk in a crowded co-working space. I kept my name off everything. No LinkedIn profile, no PR blitz. All business went through my legal team and a corporate alias. Why the secrecy? Because I knew my family. If they knew I was succeeding, they'd either try to take credit or sabotage me to protect their own fragile egos. My grandmother Eleanor passed away 2 years ago when I was 31. I flew back for the funeral, sat in the back pew, and watched my father deliver a eulogy about a devoted mother. The irony was suffocating. At the reception, I was a ghost. No one even noticed I was there. But 3 days later, I got a call from a lawyer named Amelia Vance. She represented my grandmother's private estate. "Miss Harrison," she said, "your grandmother set up a trust fund in your name 8 years ago." She explicitly instructed that no other family member was to be informed. I nearly dropped the phone. The trust held $800,000. "Your grandmother also left a letter for you," Amelia said. "Would you like me to read it?" I managed to say yes. "My dearest Chloe," Amelia read, "I know what they did to you. I know about the tuition, the lies, and the broken promises. I fought with your father until I was blue in the face. He wouldn't listen. He never does. This money is yours. No conditions. Use it to build the life they tried to steal from you. Remember what I always told you. Never let anyone tell you you're not worthy. When they finally see your worth, it will be too late. I believe in you. I always have. Love, Grandma. I used part of that money to expand Pinnacle Strategies. The rest I kept as a safety net. Let me tell you about Pinnacle Strategies today. We have 18 employees, $6 million in annual revenue, and a sleek office in downtown Boston. I wear tailored suits now, not to prove anything to anyone, but because I earned every thread myself. We specialize in supply chain optimization, helping companies become more efficient and profitable. It might not sound glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I'm damn good at it. Here's the kicker. One of our biggest accounts is Harrison Logistics, my father's company. They signed a 5-year contract with us 3 years ago. We're responsible for about 40% of their annual operational savings. My father has no clue. All correspondence goes through my team and my CFO. The few times he's praised Pinnacle Strategies at industry events, he's been praising his own daughter. The one he told everyone was a lost cause. 3 weeks ago, I received a gold-embossed invitation to his retirement gala. I almost threw it in the trash. But then, I thought about my grandmother, about 15 years of silence, about every door they slammed in my face. I RSVP'd, yes. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I knew with absolute certainty my father would do something unforgivable. I wanted to be there to walk out on my own terms. The Fairfield Country Club was exactly as I remembered it. Same crystal chandeliers, same pretentious valet parking, same old money crowd. I wore a simple black dress, tailored to perfection, with my grandmother's pearls at my neck. Everything I owned, I'd paid for myself. That mattered more to me than any brand label. Patricia intercepted me at the entrance. She looked older, her smile still that perfect mask, hiding something icy underneath. She was dripping in diamonds. "Chloe, you actually came," she said. Her tone implying it was a pleasant surprise and a minor inconvenience. "Your father wasn't sure you'd be able to find something suitable to wear." I just smiled. How thoughtful of him to worry. Inside, the room was buzzing. 200 guests, a who's who of Connecticut business. I didn't see any familiar faces. Or rather, they didn't see me. Derek breezed past me with a blonde on his arm, not even glancing my way. He was bragging to someone about his plans for the company. Classic Derek. All talk, no substance. I found my assigned seat. Table 15, in the back corner near the kitchen, far from the family table. I wasn't surprised. A waiter offered me champagne. Dom Prignon, of course. I took it. Across the room, my father caught my eye. He gave me a curt nod, a dismissal disguised as acknowledgement, and turned back to his real guests. I've learned that the best intelligence comes from being quiet. From my corner table, I eavesdropped. My father was holding court near the bar, surrounded by sycophants. I heard him talking about operational restructuring. "Then, Pinnacle Strategies has been a godsend," he said. "They're the backbone of our supply chain. Whoever runs that outfit is a genius." I took a sip of champagne to hide my smirk. My phone buzzed. It was my CFO, Mark. "Harrison Logistics is pushing for the contract renewal. They want another 5 years." I texted back, "I'll have an answer by end of week." What my father didn't know was that if Pinnacle walked away, Harrison Logistics would lose 40% of its efficiency. In that industry, that's a death warrant. I hadn't decided what to do yet. Part of me wanted to keep things professional. But as I watched my father take a bow for work that was partly mine, I felt something shift. Tonight would decide everything. I needed a refill, or maybe I just needed a break from the cloying atmosphere. At the bar, I ran into the extended family firing squad. My aunt, Patricia's sister, was the first to spot me. "Chloe, my goodness, I almost didn't recognize you," she gushed, looking me up and down like I was a car she might consider buying. "Still in Boston, doing whatever it is you do?" "Consulting," I said. "Supply chain management." "Oh, how quaint." She said it like I told her I collected stamps. "Still single?" "Your father mentioned you were, finding your way." Before I could respond, another relative chimed in. "David said you had some emotional difficulties after leaving school. It's so brave of you to show your face here." I realized with cold clarity that my father had briefed them. He'd set the narrative. The troubled daughter. The mental health issue. I gripped my champagne glass tighter. Not from hurt, but from the sheer audacity. "I'm actually doing very well, thank you," I said, my voice level. "Better than ever." They exchanged glances that screamed "poor thing" is in denial. I excused myself before I said something I'd regret. A plan was forming in my mind. Cold, inevitable, Derek found me on the terrace, staring out at the manicured golf course under the September sky. "Well, well," he said, swaggering over. "The prodigal sister returns." I didn't turn around. "Derek," he stepped up beside me. "Dad's about to give his speech. He wanted me to make sure you weren't planning anything dramatic." "Why would I do that?" "Because you've always been jealous," he said, as if it were fact. "You stormed off after the tuition thing. You've never gotten over it." I turned to look at him. "Is that what you tell yourself?" His face hardened. "I heard you started some little company up there, playing businesswoman. How long until it folds? A year? Then you'll come crawling back, begging for help." I could have told him the truth right then. But some revelations need a bigger stage. "You know what, Derek? Believe what you want. but I promise you, after tonight, you're going to wish you'd been a lot nicer to me. I walked back inside, leaving him on the terrace, clueless. The ballroom lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. My father climbed the steps to thunderous applause. The conquering hero of Connecticut logistics, taking his final lap. Thank you, he said, his voice dripping with practiced warmth. 40 years. What a ride! More applause. He started his speech, thanking his employees, his mentors, and the universe for his success. Then came the family tribute. I couldn't have done this without my incredible wife, Patricia. 30 years of patience. Patricia blew a kiss from the crowd. And my son, Derek, who's taking over as CEO next quarter. The future of Harrison Logistics. Standing ovation. Derek rose, waved, the picture of corporate royalty. Then, my father's eyes scanned the room until they landed on me. Something cruel flickered in his expression. And of course, my daughter Chloe, the spotlight swung to my corner. No degree, no real job, just freeloading off us. He paused, waiting for the laugh. The room obliged. Laughter echoed off the walls, cruel, condescending laughter. I sat perfectly still. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just waited for the noise to die down. Then I stood up. The room went quiet as I rose. I could feel every eye on me. Some curious, some pitying, others waiting for the unstable daughter to break down. I picked up my champagne glass. Slowly, deliberately, my father's smile faltered. He hadn't expected a reaction. I was supposed to be his punching bag. I raised the glass toward him. Congratulations on your retirement, Dad, I said, my voice clear and steady. You taught me a lot about hard work, sacrifice, and the meaning of family loyalty. I paused. The silence was absolute. So, here's to you. Cheers, this is the last time you're ever going to see me. I set the glass down without drinking. Then I picked up my bag, turned, and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the only sound in that cavernous room. I didn't run. I didn't look back. Behind me, silence, complete, devastating silence. I pushed through the double doors and stepped into the cool night air. For the first time in 15 years, I could finally breathe. I was almost to my car when I heard her voice. Chloe, stop right there. Patricia, she grabbed my arm, spinning me around. Her face was flushed with anger. What do you think you're doing? You humiliated him. I looked at her hand on my arm until she removed it. I humiliated him? I said quietly, you have that backwards. My father appeared behind her, his face like thunder. Get back inside, he growled. Apologize now? No, the word hung in the air. This isn't a negotiation, he said. I'm your father. You stopped being my father 15 years ago, I said. You just didn't have the guts to say it out loud. I opened my car door. If you leave now, he warned, you're done. No inheritance. Nothing. I almost laughed. Dad, you cut me off when I was 20. There's nothing left to take away. I slid into the driver's seat. Goodbye, and I drove away into the night. Okay, let me pause here. If you've made it this far, thank you. I know some of you are watching this and seeing yourself in this story. That feeling of being the family disappointment. The one they make jokes about. The one whose success they refuse to acknowledge. I want you to know something. If you've ever had to smile while someone treated you like a punchline, this story is for you. If any of this resonates, drop a comment. Tell me your story. And if you want to know what happened next, and trust me, this is where things get wild, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell. Because what my father discovered in the weeks after that party, well, let's just say he learned exactly how wrong he was. The morning after the party, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years, but I knew it wasn't over. Families like mine don't let go easily. They would try to spin the story, make me the villain. What they didn't know was that I had a card they couldn't play against. The week that followed started with text messages, not from my father, he was too proud, but from aunts, cousins, and friends who were suddenly very concerned about my mental state. Chloe, I heard about the party. Your dad says you're struggling. Do you need help? We're all worried about you. Maybe you should apologize and come home. The narrative was already being written. Poor, unstable Chloe. Loving father trying his best with a troubled daughter. I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the more interesting call. A man named Greg, a partner at Harrison Logistics, called me. Ms. Harrison, this is Greg. I'm a partner at the firm. Your father is concerned about some rumors regarding your connection to certain business partners. We think it might be good to clear the air. He was fishing. What kind of rumors? I asked. Oh, someone thought they saw you at the offices of our consulting partners, Pinnacle Strategies. I'm sure it's nothing. My mind raced. Someone had seen me. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I said, please tell my father I have nothing to discuss with him. I hung up. They were getting close. It was time to stop waiting. While I was fielding those calls in Boston, my father was facing a crisis in Connecticut. I learned later what happened in his boardroom. Richard had walked into a routine meeting. His CFO looked like he'd seen a ghost. We have a problem with Pinnacle Strategies, the CFO said. Their contract is up for renewal. They've ignored our extension offers. Richard frowned. So send another one. Increase the terms. We've tried. No one meets with their leadership. Everything goes through intermediaries. Richard stared at the folder. Something was nagging at him. Find out who owns that company, he snapped. I don't care what it takes. What he didn't know was that the name he was looking for was already on his family tree. Thursday evening, my phone rang. Patricia, I almost didn't answer. Chloe, sweetheart, she cooed. I've been so worried about you. Your father feels terrible about the party. He didn't mean what he said. You know how he is. He said I had no future in front of 200 people. He exaggerates when he's nervous. Why don't you come home this weekend? Just us. Clear the air. I could picture her in her perfect living room, rehearsing this speech. Does he want to apologize? I asked, a hesitation. He wants to move forward. That's what matters. So, no apology. Chloe, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you. Help me? You've spent 20 years making sure I knew I wasn't part of this family. I hung up. They knew something. They just didn't know how much to be afraid of yet. The next morning, I drove to Amelia Vance's office in Boston. She was my grandmother's lawyer, and she'd been my guide through all of this. I assume this is about Harrison Logistics, she said when I walked in. They're investigating Pinnacle. Amelia nodded. Your anonymity was always going to be temporary. The question is, how do you want this to unfold? She spread the documents across her desk, the contract, the trust fund papers, the incorporation papers. The contract has a standard 30-day termination clause, she said. No penalties, no legal exposure. And the trust? Completely separate from the Harrison estate. Legally unimpeachable. Richard has no claim to it. She looked at me. Margaret made sure of that. What did my grandmother say when she set this up? Amelia smiled. She said, one day Chloe is going to need leverage. When that day comes, I want her to have it. She also said, tell her not to be cruel. Just be honest. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. That afternoon, I sat down with Mark, my CFO, in the conference room. They want to renew the contract, he said. They're nervous. They should be. I pulled up the projections. The numbers told a devastating story. If we walked away, Harrison Logistics would lose 40% of their efficiency. Their clients would leave. Their margins would collapse. Derek just took over as CEO, Mark said. If this hits on his watch, his career is over before it starts. I thought about my grandmother's words. Draft the termination letter, I said. 30-day notice. No malice, just business. I paused. But I'm also going to write a personal letter to my father. He deserves to know who he's been depending on, and why it's ending. I spent Sunday writing that letter. The official termination notice was cold and clinical. The personal letter was the truth. I went through 7 drafts. The first was too angry. The second was too desperate. The final version was simple, clean, and devastating. Dear Dad, you said I had no future. You told 200 people I was worthless. I want you to know something. Pinnacle Strategies is mine. I built it. I own it. For 3 years, the daughter you dismissed has been the backbone of your business. I'm ending our contract, not as revenge, as a boundary. Grandma Eleanor left me a trust fund you never knew about. She saw what you couldn't, that I was worth investing in. Everything I have, I built myself. I don't need an apology, I just need you to know I am not what you said I was. Don't contact me again. Chloe, I included a copy of the incorporation papers. My name was printed clearly as the sole owner. Monday, 9 a.m. confirmation that the package had arrived. My phone started buzzing at 10:15. Missed calls from my father, from Derek, from Patricia. 12 missed calls, 8 texts. I didn't respond. They could wait. At 2 p.m., my assistant knocked on my door. Chloe, your family is here. They're in the lobby. They'd driven 5 hours to Boston just to confront me. I took a deep breath. Send them to conference room B. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Conference room B had glass walls. I'd chosen it on purpose. My employees could see in. They couldn't hear, but they were witnesses. My father, Patricia, and Derek were standing near the window, staring out at the Boston skyline. They'd never seen this perspective before. My territory. My domain. My father turned when I entered. His face was gray. Chloe, what is this? I took a seat at the head of the table. I assume you received my letter. You can't do this, Derek spat, jabbing a finger. Sit down, Derek. My voice was quiet but firm. I won't discuss this with you yelling. They sat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, my father leaned forward. This is a misunderstanding. What part? Pinnacle Strategies. You can't possibly own that company. I do. I slid a folder across the table. 3 years ago, your company signed a contract with mine. You've praised my work at industry events. You just didn't know you were praising me. Patricia's face went pale. But, you don't have a degree. You were just a what, Patricia? A disappointment? I shook my head. I was a 20-year-old who was told to sacrifice her future. I built something anyway. My father stared at the documents. Okay, he said, his voice strained. I apologize. About the party. I'm sorry. Now can we talk about the contract? You're sorry because you need something from me. That's not an apology. Derek slammed his hand on the table. Do you know what happens if you pull this contract? 20% of our workforce gone because of your petty revenge. It's not revenge, it's a boundary. You've been planning this for years. I planned nothing. I built a company. Your company became dependent on mine. That's not my fault. You could have told us, Patricia shrieked. When? I asked. When you told me I didn't need an education? When you spread rumors that I had mental health issues? I turned to my father. The worst part is, I would have kept the contract going. I wasn't planning this. But then you stood in front of 200 people and told them I was worthless. You chose this, not me. For a moment, I thought I saw something like recognition in his eyes. Then it was gone. What do you want? He asked flatly. Nothing you can give me. There must be something. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I stood. This meeting is over. Chloe, we're done. I've said everything I came to say. I walked toward the door. One more thing. If you contact me again, I will release every document, every record of how this family has treated me. All of it is legal. All of it is backed up. And all of it would make a very interesting story for the business press. I opened the door. The receptionist will show you out. I watched them gather themselves. 3 people who had spent my life making me feel small, now looking very small themselves. My father rose slowly, looking older. Patricia clutched her purse like a shield. Derek stared at me with fear in his eyes. This isn't over, Derek said. Yes, it is. I held the door open. I don't hate you, Dad, I said softly. I just don't need you anymore. He had no response to that. They walked out. The glass doors closed behind them. I went back to my desk and got back to work. Okay. Let me pause here again. If you're still watching, thank you. This isn't easy to tell. If you think this is where the story ends, it's not. The fallout from that meeting rippled out further than I expected. When I sent that termination letter, I thought I was just walking away. I didn't anticipate the total unraveling of my father's reputation, or the family secrets that would come spilling out once people started talking. So here's my ask. If this story has moved you, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already, turn on notifications. Because the ending of this story is complicated, messy, and it taught me something about revenge I didn't expect. Also, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from family? Did it feel like freedom or like grief? Or both? Now back to the story. 1 week after that confrontation, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My uncle, Robert, my father's younger brother, the black sheep of the family. An artist. I hadn't seen him since my mother's funeral. Chloe, his voice was rough. I heard what happened. Listen, there's something you should know. Something I should have told you years ago. He told me the truth. When your father said there was no money for your tuition, that was a lie. Your mother set up a specific fund for you before she died, enough to cover your entire education. Richard drained it. He used it for Derek's EMBA. I gripped the edge of my desk. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid of him. We all were. Your grandmother found out. That's why she set up the trust for you. She couldn't get your mother's money back, but she could make sure Richard didn't take anything else. 2 months after I terminated the Meridian contract, the consequences became public. The company announced a 20% workforce reduction, 70 people laid off right before the holidays. The press release blamed market conditions, but everyone knew the real story. Derek, barely 3 months into his role as CEO, was already being questioned by the board. The triumphant exit he'd planned was unraveling. But the real damage was to their reputation. Word spread. Not from me. But 200 people had watched my father humiliate me. And when those same people heard that I was the backbone of his company, the whispers started. Did you hear about David Harrison? Mocked his own daughter. She was keeping his company afloat. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. My grandmother was right. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. 6 months later, I sat in a therapist's office in Beacon Hill. Not because I was falling apart, but because I was finally ready to put myself back together. We talked about my family, about the burden of building success in silence, about the strange grief of cutting ties. Do you regret it? She asked. No, I said. I regret that it had to happen. But I don't regret protecting myself. Outside of therapy, life was good. Pinnacle was thriving. We'd replaced the Harrison contract with 3 smaller clients, more diversified, more stable. Mark got a promotion. I hired new people. I reconnected with Uncle Robert. We had dinner once a month. He told me stories about my mother. She'd been fierce, stubborn. You're just like her, he said. She'd be so proud of you. I still keep a photo of my grandmother on my desk. I visit her grave every month. I tell her about my life. It feels strange talking to a headstone, but also healing. I did it, Grandma, I told her one spring morning. I didn't let them define me. The wind rustled through the trees. If I listened closely, I could almost hear her voice. I knew you would. I always knew. So, here's what I learned. Your worth is not determined by a diploma. It's not determined by your family's opinion. It's determined by what you build when no one is watching. By who you become when everyone counts you out. My father thought he was teaching me a lesson. He thought he was putting me in my place. What he actually did was set me free. I don't hate my family. Hate takes energy. Hate is a chain. I'd rather spend that energy on people who deserve it. On a life that's truly mine. Boundaries aren't about revenge, they're about protection. They're about saying, this is where my life begins and your damage ends. If you're in a family that makes you feel small, if you have people who see your potential as a threat, If you've ever been the family disappointment, I see you. I've been you, and I promise you, there is life on the other side of walking away. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. If this resonated, please subscribe to Winds of Thought, hit the notification bell, and check the description for more stories like this one. And remember, you are not what they said you were. You never were. You are so much more. Until next time, this is Chloe, and I'm finally free.